Welcome back to Library Chess YouTube channel. In today's class, we'll be learning how to make this beautiful smoky ruffle. So it just continues from the chest area here now, from the bust area all the way to the sleeve, and then we gather this using an elastic on the hem of the sleeve. If this is what you like to learn, kindly stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. Okay, so to make this smoky design, I'll be illustrating with this paper, and I have a rectangular paper here, and then I'll be drafting my boxes in this. So it depends on how tiny or close together you want this to be. I'll be working with a measurement of 2 inches by 2 inches. So I have a paper square of 2 inches by 2 inches, and then I'm going to measure it. Okay, so I measure 2 inches by 2 inches vertically. So this ruler I'm working with from here to here is actually 2 inches. So I don't need to put a rule here. That's why I'm just using my ruler as a guide. So after measuring it like this, vertically also, I'll measure 2 inches by 2 inches, which is this. So this is the first 2 inches. This is the second one. This is the third one, and this is the last one. So now after getting a box of 2 inches by 2 inches, you can see what we have. Now I'll start drafting my pattern. So I'm going to leave the first row. Then after lifting the first row, I'll leave this side also, I'll leave this side, and then leave this side. So everything I'm doing is just here. So leaving this first row and this first row now, I'm going to start drafting. Okay, so I'll draw on this, omit this, draw on this, omit this, draw on this, and then this last one also I'll leave it. Then I'll leave the next row again, and then draw on this, omit this, draw on this, omit this, draw on this, and leave the next section here. Then here also I'll leave it, and then continue like that. So my paper is exhausted. So now I'll go over to our fabric now and replicate exactly what we have here. So now this is the fabric I'm working with. I'm using this satin fabric, and you can see how I've done this. You can see that on this uppermost part I did not draw any markings, and then I left this side also, this angle also I left it, and then on the hem also I left it. So you can see what I did, and then after leaving those 4 corners, I started marking my points. So the first row I'll mark, leave this, mark, leave this till I get there. Leave the next row, then the next one I'll mark, leave, mark, leave, mark, leave, do everything. Leave the next row, move to the next row, and repeat the same thing till I have covered this up. So the measurement that I used in cutting this rectangle is actually 30 inches by 27 inches. So now you can actually tag this using your needle and thread, but it may be quite tasking. So I'll be using my machine to do this. And to do this now, I'll just pick this and then pick this together. So you can see the way the arrow is marked. So it means this point and this point is what we want to sew together. So you can actually tack it like this by picking this and tack. But I'll take this to the sewing machine. After picking it, I'll just brace it with a machine here. Okay, so I'm on the machine now. Like I said, I'll be doing this with a machine, so you can see how it is staying. So this point here, I'm just going to take this now and then take this also. So once I have it together now, I'll take it under the machine now, and then I'm going to sew it. I'm just going to stop stitch on it like this. So after sewing it, I'm going to cut it off. So this is what this is going to look like. So after doing that now, I'm going to move over to the next one. I'll take it together like this. Then after taking it together, I'll put it under my machine, and then I'm just going to stop stitch on one spot. Okay, so once you stop stitch on one spot, you have this, and then you can see that the ruffles are forming. So now you don't have to use a box of 2 by 2, depending on how close you want these ruffles to be. You can do maybe 1 inch by a box of 1 inch by 1 inch, or a box of 1.5. Okay, I hope you can sew something. So it doesn't have to be this big. It can be 1 inch by 1 inch, or 1.5 by 1.5 inch, or even 3 inches by 3 inches if you want it higher. So now you take this also again, and then put it under the machine and do the same thing. So you do all this till you reach the end point. So once you stitch on it now, You can see just something tiny like this. You just stitch on it to hold this, and then you continue like that. Okay, so now it has been tagged, as you can see, and then the tagging should be on the wrong side and the marking also on the wrong side. So this is what it's looking like on the right side, and this is the ruffles that we have. So like I said, if you want your ruffles close together, remember we use 2 by 2 inches for the measurement of this. You can use 1.5 by 1.5 or 1 by 1. So I did this with a 1 by 1 inch, and this is what it's giving me. You can see how tight and close this is compared to what we have here, which is 2 by 2 inches. Okay, so now the next thing now is to cut our sleeve, and to do this I just cut my basic sleeve. The difference between this and the regular basic sleeve that we cut is that in this case, remember, if we cut a basic sleeve, we will measure the round sleeve of where this sleeve is going to reach, and then use it to shape it to the underarm like this. But because I'll be putting an elastic here, I'm just leaving it, I'm just maintaining the measurement. In fact, I increased the measurement. For my armhole measurement, I'm supposed to use 14 inches, which is 14 divided by 2 to give me 7. But I used 9 inches here because I want to add some pleats around here. If you don't want to add some pleats, you just trim it and use your actual measurements. But here on the hem line, you should not use. I think I'm going to use my actual measurements here. Then I'll maintain it to the hem line. I'm not going to shape it, so that the excess that I have here, by the time I pass my elastic to it, is going to gather it a bit to form something like a ball sleeve for me. So now I'll open up the sleeve, and then if you check the thumbnail very well, you'll notice that the ruffle starts from the bicep area. So now, depending on the measurements, okay, so it depends on the measurements you want to work with. So you can measure like 4 inch or 5 inch or 6 inches from the upper part of your sleeve. So it is that point that your ruffle will start from. So here I think I'm just going to measure around 4 inches, and once I measure that, I'll make it into a straight line, so you can see what I have. So I'm just using this small sleeve for a tutorial. If you want it, you just measure where you want your sleeve to be. So the total length of this sleeve that I'm working with is 10 inches including allowance, because this is a tutorial. So if you want it to reach your elbow, you just need to take that measurement to your elbow. It can be 12, it can be 13, depending on what you want. So now I'm just going to cut out a ruffle that fits into this. So you can actually cut exactly what you have here, but I used a small fabric for my ruffle. Instead of cutting out exactly what you have, you just cut this ruffle here in excess, so that you can gather it a bit to this part when you're sewing it. So if you cut it out in excess now and you want to sew it, so now to sew this, now I'll just place it like this, and then I'm going to sew it to this. So if you have it in excess, you can sew it, but because I said I'm going to be reducing these sleeves to my actual measurement, so now if I actually reduce this sleeve, I'll have something like this. Okay, so I'm just shaping up the excess that I had, and then this is what my sleeve is going to look like. So if my sleeve is looking like this now, so to add these ruffles now, and then remember that we left the first box, so this allowance that we left on the first box is going to allow us to gather whatever it is that we want to gather here. So that's what I'm going to be using. This first box here is where I'm going to be gathering this, and then I'll sew it, and by the time I sew it and then I fold this over like this, it's going to be neatly finished. So after sewing that and folding it, I'm going to sew this down also, and then because I said I'll be adding an elastic to this. Okay, so I'm going to have to sew this, and as you can see, I just gathered it a bit on that point. If you want it fuller than this, you just need to cut your ruffles in excess so that you have enough gathering there. So after gathering it now, I'm going to fold this over here now, and here I'm going to sew it down to my round the hemline of my sleeve. So after sewing it down, I've cut this long strip of fabric that's going to be serving as a channel for my elastic. So now I'm going to use this fabric to create a casing. So you can actually use this also to create a casing by just folding your fabric like this and then cutting it, but I don't want to go through all that. So I'm just going to sew this down. Then after sewing it down, I'll sew this like this now and then turn it over so that I can create a casing for my elastic before we continue. Okay, so now I've sewn it down now, and I've used this strip to turn a casing. So here now I'll be measuring my round sleeve measurements, and then passing an elastic to gather this together. So now our sleeve is ready. The next one is to work on the design on the chest area. So now the elastic has been added to the hem, and see what we have. And like I said, if you want it to be full, see, I used almost immediately because this is actually a requested video and I just had to do it immediately. So I'm just working with what I have. So if you want this fuller now, you gather more smoky fabric. Instead of just cutting out the exact size of your sleeve measurements, you can double it. That's after smoking it. You can double it now and then gather everything to your sleeve so that you can have enough room for it to really puff out now and give you that ball effect that you're looking for. So now we're just going to set this up, and this is the bicep area that is just straight, that does not have any ruffle. So now we'll set that aside now and work with the design on the chest. So with the leftover ruffle that I have, which is this, I'm just going to mirror what I have there now, and then I'll cut it out. So after cutting it out, I'll fold it in here now, and then flip my fabric over now, and then sew it to that area. So the first thing is to measure out the area that you want this design to be. So now you can just make it cover your, this is my under bust around here, so you can make it cover your under bust area like this all the way to your handhole. So if you have this space to work with, I hope you can see. Okay, so I think this chalk is clear, so you can just measure out this part now, that this is where you want to have this design. So now the leftover ruffle that I have, I'm just going to place it. You can actually gather it just like what we did there now, and then to sew this, I'm going to trim off the excess that I have there, and then I'm going to fold it over now, following this chalk line that I have. I'm just going to go ahead now and gather this on it now. Then after gathering it, I'll hold it, then fold it to this side also, and gather it in a way that it is going to be reading it. So by the time I'm done, I'll have something like this before I now add my sleeve to that part. Okay, so can you see how carefully I just gathered this round down marking? That's where I want the design to be. So that it can be neatly finished, I just turned it right side facing right side, and then I started gathering it following that shape. So you can see I just gathered it round following that shape now towards the armhole. Remember, we're still going to add in a sleeve to this so that it will look like the ruffle is continuous from the bodice to the sleeve. So you need to gather it and leave only the armhole area opened, so that the rough edges will just be only on the armhole area, and by the time you add your sleeve to it, it's also going to conceal it. So now that I've sewn it, I can now fold it over and then see what I have. So you can look at these ruffles that I have now. I'm okay with it. So once I'm okay with it now, remember I said the only open part is just going to be on the armhole area. So now let me trim this so that we can see it better. So now I'll just take it towards the armhole area, which is this, and then I'm going to gather the excess ruffles here. If it's too much, you can trim it off. Okay, so I'll gather, I see the ruffle that I have there on the bust area there. So I'll gather it now. I'll sew it down to the armhole. See the armhole here, so you can turn it to the wrong side now and sew it following the armhole line so that you can trim off the excess. Then after doing that, now we're going to sew our sleeve to our armhole, then we'll take it to the mannequin so that we'll see what we have. Okay, so for the sake of clarity, you can see what I was explaining. After taking it down and pinning it, you can see the ruffle that we have. So I just turned it to the opposite side now and sew it to the armhole. So by the time I sew it to the armhole now, and I know it is secured, I'm going to trim off the excess that I have here. So using my scissors, I'll trim off the excess following the armhole shape. Okay, so I've trimmed it off now, and you can see what we have. So I just use this blue thread so that we can see how I just sew it down clearly. So this is what we have now. The next thing now is to fix our sleeve. So you can see that all other places, you can see how neat they are. They are all neatly finished all around. The only rough edges we have is just towards the armhole, and that's going to be taken care of by the time we sew our sleeve to the armhole. So I'll do that now, then take it to the mannequin so that we'll see what we have. Okay, so this is what our ruffle is looking like. So you can see the one on the chest line is neatly finished completely because of the way we sew it. And here, once we sew our armhole, you just close the rough edges for us. And then if you look at this now, you notice that it looks like this ruffle just continues to the armhole area, to the sleeve. That's the idea, so that you think the ruffle is continuous from the chest area to the sleeve area. That was why I made sure this was going towards the armhole, so that by the time I sew my sleeve in, it's just going to be continuous like that. And then on the upper part, you can see that the ruffle starts from where the bicep stop. It does not start from where our armhole is now. And then the ruffles just come out like this. So if you want it more puffy, you know what to do, because we already discussed this in the course of the tutorial. Okay, so this is the elastic band that we fixed on this, you can see, and this is the channel that we created. So I just like to use a contrasting color of thread so that we can see clearly what I'm doing. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment and subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.